In the heart of South America, far away from the big metropolises like Rio de Janeiro or Buenos Aires, there is a place that harbors perhaps even more life. In a region of the world with one of the most diverse flora and fauna on the planet, we will visit an almost infinite floodplain, where rains and droughts rule life. Welcome to the Pantanal. Population: more than 4,700 animal and plant species. The Pantanal is an area of more than 300,000 square kilometers located in the territories of Brazil, Bolivia, and Paraguay. This southern region of the planet is home to more than 300 species of fish, 53 species of amphibians, 98 species of reptiles, and 650 species of birds. But there is a problem. It is only November, and the Pantanal at this time of the year shows us its other face, that of a dry savanna with temperatures that can reach up to 50 degrees Celsius and make it an almost inert place. Here, there are even small vestiges of what is the largest freshwater ecological system in the world, and the few survivors of these difficult conditions must manage not to succumb. But there is nothing that time cannot cure, and time, together with Mother Nature, is in charge of making what seems to be a miracle, turning an arid region into an oasis for life in the middle of South America. Every year, in mid-January, the first rains begin in the Pantanal, and with them, the landscape will be transformed for the next 6 months. These rains flood up to 80% of the plain up to 3 meters underwater, transforming a territory the size of Vietnam into a natural reservoir, ready to serve as home to the most diverse ecosystem on the planet. The miracle of turning a desert region into an infinite tributary full of life, as is the Pantanal, is not spontaneous generation at all. It is Mother Nature herself working to shelter thousands of species in a single place. With rainfall increasing the flow of large tributaries such as the Paraguay, Taquari, and São Lourenço rivers, all these millions of cubic tons of water go straight to the depression in the Earth's crust that created the imposing Andean mountain range millions of years ago. With months of unstoppable rains, where up to 70% of the annual rainfall accumulates, what was once a vast plain with reduced marshy areas becomes the place where aquatic and terrestrial species become neighbors. Although at first glance it seems like a great idea to bring thousands of species together in a unique setting at the same time, and it is impressive just to think about it, not everything is rosy in the life of the Pantanal. In this infinite reservoir, each species fights its own battle for survival, either to the peculiar conditions of the ecosystem or to the presence of indomitable predators. Just as the Pantanal gives life, in a matter of seconds it can take it away. It is animal law at its best. One of the most affected by the hectic daily routine in the Pantanal are the fish. While it is true that in the rainy season they enjoy the endless kilometers of flooded land, nothing lasts forever, and what used to be infinite hectares of fresh water, in the dry season is transformed into small ponds, where food is scarce and movement is limited. Of course, as usual, this cycle restarts every year, and those fish that have survived against the odds can once again enjoy those vast submerged paths full of flowers, fruits, algae, and even other small fish. However, not all that glitters is gold. Although the pleasant living conditions in the Pantanal have brought abundant food for marine life, the jabiru is aware of the changes brought about by the rains and will not let its favorite food go far away. This bird is on the prowl, practicing a little sport fishing. The jabiru is nothing less than the largest stork in the entire New World. With its characteristic black head and red neck, and a wingspan of up to 3 meters, This imposing bird is the bane of many fish that are enjoying what, up to that moment, for them, was a beautiful day in the Pantanal. For a group of fish, the only thing worse than encountering a hungry jabiru is encountering several of these birds. When food is scarce, the jabiru, despite not being a social bird, joins up with other fellow species in order to be more efficient at fishing. Thanks to Mother Nature, and fortunately for the marine species of the Pantanal, the jabiru does not only feed on fish and chooses to eat a surprisingly varied diet. When the abundance of the Pantanal allows it, the so-called stork of Latin America can eat frogs, snakes, insects, and even baby caimans. When you see a bird as colossal as the jabiru, up to 5 feet tall, you can probably only expect its spectacular song to delight the entire Pantanal neighborhood. But the truth is that this bird is mute, being unable to produce voices or songs. The way in which it communicates with other fellow species is through beak tapping, a rather curious way of socializing for these birds. After a successful fishing, the jabiru usually perches in trees near swampy areas, such as those that abound in the Pantanal. Although due to its impressive size, and a beak that can measure up to 35 centimeters, one might think that the jabiru is a real Pantanal bully. The truth is that this bird faces important predators, such as the carancho and the pampas harrier, which are not as strong as the jabiru. The jabiru stork is an example of fidelity in the love life of the Pantanal. This bird is monogamous, forming lifelong pairs. And when lifelong can mean up to the 30 or 40 years that this species lives on average, it can be seen that there is commitment between the spouses. Unable to sing, the male manages to woo the female jabiru with a different technique, in a ritual in which he moves his beak up and down, with the female sitting on his heels. Around August and September, the jabiru pair decides to enlarge the family in the breeding season. Living in a place where raising chicks is not particularly easy, the jabiru believe in good planning to succeed as parents. To do this, they will both build a sturdy nest in the tallest trees they can find, far away from danger. Being united forever, the jabiru will establish the constructed nest as the family home, using it for raising chicks each breeding season. Of course, as a good pair, both support each other when incubating the eggs in the nest. These are usually between 2 and 5 eggs, from which half of the chicks are usually hatched. After a month of incubation, the chicks will live in the comfortable family nest for about 110 days. After this period, they will decide to get to know the Pantanal in the company of their parents, where they will learn what is necessary to survive in this very changeable region. While the almost carefree jabiru dives into the waters of the Pantanal, other species think twice before even approaching to drink a little water. Just as the new tributaries created by the rains can bring food and life to some animals, they can also be the source of a quick and unwelcome end. The protagonist of all this fear of the Pantanal species to dive into its infinite waters is the ferocious caiman yakare. And this fear is not at all irrational. In the Pantanal, a region similar in size to Finland, inhabit, according to estimates, up to 10 million caimans, being one of the places in the world with the highest density of these reptiles. In the Pantanal, where some see one of the world's greatest biodiversity hotspots, the caiman yakare sees a feast to please its endless appetite. With a length of up to 3 meters, a back covered by armored skin, and a distinctive blackish color, the caiman yakare is the closest thing to a war machine within the Pantanal ecosystem. But the caiman yakare's greatest quality for being a top predator is not its colossal size, or even its heart-rending bite of more than 1,000 kilograms of force. In a place in constant motion, where prey is everywhere, and change is the rule, this reptile sees stealth as its best tool for successfully bringing prey to its table. The coloration of the caiman yacaré is ideal to go completely unnoticed in the swampy terrain it usually inhabits in the Pantanal, until it is too late for its prey. Patience is also one of its greatest virtues, as this predator can spend hours waiting for the best moment to attack its potential dinner. Leaving only its eyes and nose above the surface, the caiman blends in among the swirling tributaries of the Pantanal. Even when all seems calm, most animals must exercise great caution when attempting to quench their thirst with what appears to be a quiet well. Taking a simple sip of water often ends up costing the lives of the base of the food chain in this region of the planet. The unique ecosystem of the Pantanal, which combines aquatic and terrestrial species, is ideal to appease the insatiable appetite of the caiman yacaré. The diet of this reptile is very varied, practically making no distinction between those prey that swim or walk in the immense Pantanal. This predator is capable of devouring everything from small snails and mollusks to mammals such as river otters, or the very abundant in the Pantanal, capybaras. Another dish that brings the great diversity of the Pantanal to the caiman's table is the piranha. These are abundant in the territories dominated by the caiman, and, contrary to what happens with terrestrial prey, they require almost no effort to capture. It is often enough to open their mouths, and it is only a matter of luck that the piranhas, also known as palomitas, become a nutritious snack for the king of the Pantanal waters. Seeing the impressive armor of the caiman and knowing the power of its bite, it is easy to sense that this reptile has no natural predators in the endless Pantanal. However, this does not mean that the caiman's days are free of danger. When the defense of a territory is at stake, or the right to reproduce with a fertile female, the caiman does not hesitate to engage in combat against its fellow species. In an area like the Pantanal, with so many of these reptiles, fights are the order of the day, and sometimes a strong tail slap or a lethal bite can make the difference between survival and becoming one of the Pantanal's victims. But to tell the truth, having to go into combat mode is not even among the first concerns of the caiman yacaré. As with the rest of the species, the fluctuating dynamics of the Pantanal brings with it important changes to which the species must adapt in order not to end up being just a memory in a dry plain. When the dry season begins to appear, and the tributaries are no longer even the shadow of those springs full of life, the caiman yacaré demonstrates that, more than a wild beast, it is a survivor by nature. Using what we could call a kind of hibernation, the caiman slows its heart rate and metabolism to vital minimums, and locates one of the few remaining river sources in the now dry Pantanal. In these reduced mud puddles, which are only vestiges of what were once endless swamps full of life, the caiman will wait patiently for Mother Nature to give it another rainy day, so that its aquatic kingdom can re-emerge. At the same time that the caiman yacaré dominates the flooded lands of the Pantanal with an iron fist and exhibits its imposing jaw to all its prey and challengers, there is another species that prefers to use its nose as a tool for daily chores, the peculiar South American tapir. With a prominent nose that makes us forget the rest of its appearance, the tapir is one of those species that perfectly shows the biodiversity of the Pantanal. This colossus of up to 320 kilograms is nothing less than the largest land mammal in all of South America. Although from its appearance, the tapir may be thought to be related to the anteater or pigs, the truth is that its closest living relatives are rhinoceroses, thousands of kilometers away from their comfortable habitat in the flooded Pantanal. The tapir is a strong believer that, if life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. With its prominent prehensile nose, there is little this majestic animal can't do. From holding leaves for food, to clearing brush, to even using it as a snorkel. Yes, despite their bestial size, tapirs are prodigies when it comes to swimming and even diving, something more than convenient when you have at your disposal the endless swamps of this region of the world. When it is not enjoying a pleasant bath in the flooded lands of the Pantanal, which helps it to eliminate parasites from its skin, the tapir is roaming the diverse vegetation of the habitat, in search of something to take to its stomach, thanks to the infinite gifts of nature at this time of the year. The solitary tapir can eat a varied diet of leaves, shoots, grasses, and even plants. Its refined sense of smell, represented in its peculiar snout, also helps it to find exquisite fruits, which, in this tropical climate, are authentic delicacies. If one species can be baptized as the gardener of the Pantanal, it is the tapir. Upon finding a fruit on the ground, this mammal immediately grabs it with its versatile tail. So far, nothing fantastic, but the magic happens sometime later when the tapir has the urge to relieve itself and chooses another area of the Pantanal as its personal throne. Here the tapir is, perhaps unwittingly, sowing the seed of the fruit it enjoyed with a more than fertile fertilizer. If the radical change of seasons in the Pantanal allows it, in a few months that small seed will grow into a tree that will feed the wildlife, and perhaps even the tapir itself. Although the tapir is one of the species that contributes the most to sustaining plant and animal life in the Great Pantanal, nature is often unkind to this mammal. After all, no matter how hard you try to conserve your own habitat, when you fall into the eyes of the biggest predators of the place, you become just another dish on their menu. The main wild species that see the tapir as a substantial food source in the middle of the Pantanal are the voracious jaguar and the green anaconda. To confront the feline, the strategy will always be to flee towards the mighty tributaries in the middle of the Pantanal, since not even this one is able to fight against the swimming skills of the tame tapir. In the case of the anaconda, the containment mechanisms to avoid being eaten are basically to be always alert, since this wild reptile comes out where it is least expected, and the swampy lands are the perfect hiding place. In case the wildlife takes its toll on the great tapir, no less than 320 kilograms of food will end up in the Pantanal ecosystem. Of course, the predator that has done the hunting job always gets the lion's share. But some species, upon perceiving the unmistakable smell of fresh meat, will immediately approach the scene with the desire to partake of the feast. One of these visitors is usually the crested caracara, which, by making its presence felt on the carcasses, even scares away the black vultures that also wanted to take advantage of the occasion to remove the noise from their stomachs. The crested caracara is an imposing bird of prey, with a wingspan of up to 132 centimeters and weighing 1.6 kilograms. The caracara is by no means just one of the hundreds of bird species that soar through the skies of the Pantanal. Second only to the gerfalcon in body mass, the caracara is the second largest falcon in the world. The appearance of the caracara is striking and projects respect among the rest of the inhabitants of the skies and treetops of the Pantanal. Most of the caracara's body is covered with plumage in shades of brown and off-white beige, except for its naked face, which reveals its striking reddish-orange beak base, which changes color depending on the caracara's age and mood. Despite having the entire swamp sky at its disposal, the caracara is accustomed to walking around the Pantanal terrain looking for food, using its long legs. Although not a particularly successful singer, the caracara does emit some sounds such as cries, whistles, and clucks. Generally, the crested caracara leads a solitary life that takes short breaks when nature provides a good source of food. In these cases, several specimens can gather together. The palate of the crested caracara does not make many pretensions and adapts to the varied ecosystem it inhabits. Its favorite food, having a high nutritional value and not requiring much effort, are the carcasses of other species that the agitated life of the Pantanal offers it. When a caiman yakari has been successful in the hunt, but the size of its prey has exceeded its appetite, the caracara will always arrive to take advantage of the leftovers. Nothing is wasted in the Pantanal. Occasionally, the caracara even gives some animals, such as calves, a little boost to a better life. Attacking with its claws in the area of the eyes and lips, these animals are defenseless in the difficult conditions that can occur in the daily routine of the Pantanal. It is only a matter of time before all that meat becomes a nutritious meal for this intelligent and calculating hawk. If, on the other hand, there is not so much luck as to be opportunistic, the caracara has not the slightest problem in doing the job on its own. Here, the small prey of the Pantanal are in trouble, as this bird of prey has set its sights on them. From small mammals like coatis, to tiny reptiles like iguanas or caiman hatchlings, everything is a good food option within reach of the caracara. Even the smallest birds have to take care of themselves and their nests, because their young hatchlings and eggs are a not inconsiderable dish, and very high in protein, which the caracara needs to stay in shape. But not everything has to be meat. Since they live in the very fertile Pantanal, the available fruits are also a good supply of nutrients. In this case, the same happens as with the tapir ecologist, because the caracaras usually take the fruits in one region of the swamp and throw their seeds in other places, thus contributing their grain of sand to the conservation of this fragile ecosystem. In difficult times, when the waters are not as abundant as before, the caracara usually goes fishing and takes advantage of those fish that have been locked in small pools. It is a relatively easy meal. Here too, animals that have succumbed to the scarcity of the dry season are the order of the day. Of course, to feed on them, you have to deal with competition from other hungry carnivores. A good alternative to appease hunger, though not as substantial, are the worms and maggots in the small wetlands that still remain. Few species can ignore the presence of the caracara in the skies over the Pantanal, or when it is strolling through the vegetation. However, there is one inhabitant of this endless swamp that, even when the caracara makes its powerful whistles, does not even bother to wake up, the very sleepy sloth. The sloth is living proof that you don't have to be always alert to be a resident of the wild Pantanal. Sleeping up to 20 hours a day, the sloth spends its daily routines hanging upside down in the treetops at the edge of the swamp. The key to the sloth's survival in the sometimes chaotic environment of the Pantanal is to remain unnoticed. With a medium size of only 77 centimeters and an inconspicuous gray to brown fur, the sloth camouflages itself well in the branches of the Pantanal's trees. When not perched comfortably in a tree, out of reach of most predators in the ecosystem, the sloth moves through the jungle, crossing from canopy to canopy. Of course, given its reputation, it is easy to sense that the sloth is not particularly addicted to speed. While the rest of the Pantanal changes in a fraction of a second, the sloth chooses to take it easy, moving at an average of 7 centimeters per hour. Given that in the dense Pantanal there are species that move, let's say, a little faster than the tame sloth, the idea of staying on the ground for a long time does not seem very sensible. The sloth, aware of its dexterity, comes down only once a week or so, and it does so to perform an activity to which it attaches great importance: defecating. Although it is not entirely clear, it is quite curious that this animal endangers its life by descending from the trees to perform one of its physiological needs such as this. Some theories indicate that the sloth does this behavior in an attempt to use its feces as fertilizer for the very trees it inhabits, while others suggest that it does it to cover its own fecal matter with soil, so as to leave no trace of its presence to predators. The good thing is that, thanks to its very slow metabolism, the sloth does not have to expose itself to the Pantanal soil very often. What some animals take only a few hours to digest, the sloth can take up to several days. A simple diet, without much extravagance, also allows the sloth to spend its days without having to run into its Pantanal neighbors, and thus not be seen as prey. As can be imagined from its calm temperament and its lack of hunting skills, the sloth is purely herbivorous. The rich vegetation of the Pantanal in the rainy season provides it with menus of young leaves, shoots, and shoots. Although it is often not very demanding and devours practically everything green in the treetops, its favorite dish is guarumo leaves. Just because the treetops are the sloth's favorite place to spend the day, doesn't mean that this mammal can always restrain itself from enjoying the refreshing waters of the Pantanal. On some occasions, the urge to take a dip overrides the instinct for survival, and the sloth drops into a nearby tributary. Despite not looking like a natural swimmer, the sloth moves quite well in the water, up to 3 times faster than on land, and is even able to hold its breath for long periods. But just because it is capable, doesn't mean it has to, as you never know when an anaconda or other predator will be hiding, waiting for an opportunity to satiate its appetite with this gentle mammal. Contrary to the sloth's quiet and shadowy lifestyle, the king of the Pantanal has nothing to fear. With a size of up to 150 kilograms, enormous paws crowned with claws, and a jaw capable of destroying the head of a crocodile with a single bite, the jaguar is the undisputed lord and master of the most diverse ecosystem on Earth. The jaguar is perhaps the most representative species of the Pantanal, with a mottled coat that is both striking and functional for camouflaging itself in the vegetation. Similar in appearance to the leopard but larger, the jaguar instills fear in virtually all wildlife species in its habitat. But being the third largest felid, behind only the lion and the tiger, does not mean that the jaguar's life in the Pantanal is all plain sailing. Just as ecosystems change at breathtaking speed, the wildlife of the Pantanal also demands that even royalty adapt to new challenges every day. When you are a big cat with a voracious appetite, even living in the middle of a place as vast as the Pantanal, you become very territorial. A single jaguar can establish a territory of up to 80 square kilometers, depending on the availability of prey and habitat conditions. In a region where up to 4,000 jaguars live, the place with the highest density of these imposing cats in the world, not very gentle encounters between the felines are the order of the day. Scratches on trees, urine, and feces are some of the signs that indicate the entrance of a jaguar. As a final warning signal, the jaguar will make an imposing roar to alert its fellow species to turn around. Usually, when mating with a female is not at stake, the territory invader prefers to keep the peace in the swamp and return the way he came. With its territory safe from invaders, the Pantanal jaguar sets its sights on satisfying its appetite. Of course, this majestic feline with its powerful jaw and sharp claws does not even turn to look at the fruits and abundant grasses of the Pantanal. All its attention is focused on finding its next prey and devouring it as quickly as possible. With an endless supply of prey in one place, the jaguar preys on more than 80 different species. Almost anything that moves in the swamp can become part of the menu of this ferocious and efficient hunter. From small animals such as agoutis, frogs, porcupines, or turtles, to larger ones such as tapirs, peccaries, or the, feared by many, Pantanal anaconda. Thanks to its colossal physical conditions, in all the immensity of the Pantanal, the jaguar stands as a super predator. Although in general appearance, the jaguar resembles its distant relative the leopard, at the moment of hunting they do differ, and very much so. Running at full speed through the grasslands after their prey is not the jaguar's thing. On the other hand, planning an elaborate and careful ambush does give good results in a terrain full of swamps and thick vegetation. Contrary to the rest of its family members, the jaguar, when hunting, does not target the neck of its victims, but aims directly at the head. With its relentless bite, one of the strongest in the entire animal kingdom, it is capable of breaking bones as if they were butter. Not even the abundant waters of the Pantanal are a safe place to escape the wild jaguar. A classic ambush of these felines is to spot their prey swimming and wait for a blind spot. When they least expect it, a colossal feline weighing over 100 kilos has leapt upon them, plunging them into the water, then bringing them to land and devouring them. The enormous appetite of the Pantanal jaguar leads it to always want to hunt the largest prey possible, as the largest specimens are capable of devouring up to 34 kilograms of meat at a time, and then starve for a long time. With this in mind, one of the jaguar's main hunting targets could be none other than the world's largest rodent, the capybara, also called capybara. The vast wetlands and dense forests of the Pantanal are the perfect habitat for the majestic capybara. In fact, this biodiverse ecosystem is home to the highest density of capybaras in the world. So on a walk through the Pantanal, it is quite easy to encounter these very popular rodents. In some areas of this endless flooded plain, groups of up to 100 members can be seen living in harmony and enjoying the paradise that Mother Nature has given them. The capybara's appearance is striking, yet not very frightening. It has a barrel-shaped body and a comparatively small head. Both are covered with a reddish-brown coat that becomes lighter as it descends and is quite thin, which protects it very little from the relentless sun that often illuminates the Pantanal sky. To avoid sunstroke on their skin, the capybaras use a quite natural and peculiar sunscreen, such as the abundant mud of the swamp. On those days when the sun gives no respite, the capybaras go straight to the nearest mud puddle and rub their backs until they are well covered. Contrary to other species, capybaras do enjoy the advantages of living in a place with as many tributaries as the Pantanal. These rodents love to be in the water enjoying a good bath. They even submerge their entire body, leaving out only their ears, nostrils, and eyes, something quite frequent to refresh themselves when the weather is sunnier. Although they may not look like the best swimmers in the world, capybaras move very well in the water and can even spend up to 5 minutes submerged without breathing, which makes them innate divers. It is quite common to see these giant rodents serving as boats for some non-aquatic species of the Pantanal when crossing wetlands. When capybara's stomachs start to rumble, they have the varied terrestrial and aquatic plant species of the Pantanal at their disposal. Contrary to what was previously thought, they have a totally herbivorous diet. To keep those big bodies well fed, capybaras do something rather peculiar. In order to absorb as many nutrients as possible from the grasses they eat, they practice coprophagy, or, in other words, they eat their own feces. But in a place as wild as the Pantanal, not everything can be baths, food, and fun. It is always important to be alert to danger, so as not to be at the table of some of the large predators of the area. Living in groups of capybaras is a very useful survival measure in this place where many animals' mouths water at the sight of a rodent weighing up to 65 kilograms. The groups are usually formed by a couple and their young, or by several adult specimens. With the vastness of the Pantanal at their disposal, these groups tend to have a lot of land at their command, dominating up to 100,000 square meters, and enjoying abundant food and refreshing wetlands in their, shall we say, small patch of the Pantanal. Of course, in an ecosystem inhabited by so many capybaras, it is practically impossible that there are no other capybaras trying to enter the group's domain. For this, the borders are very well delimited using their scent glands, so that the intruding capybaras know that they must leave their property. This complex organization is by no means random. Capybaras have a well-structured chain of command, where everyone knows their role in the group. Of course, as it usually happens in the wild, there is a dominant male who leads the group and makes the decisions. After him, there are the females along with the young, and, if the male allows it, other subordinate males can also be part of the group. Of course, the reign of the dominant male does not last forever. Often, after several years of management, another male appears to challenge the status quo, and after a fight where they use their sharp teeth, a new male takes over. The moment of establishing a new hierarchy is basically the only one where capybaras are aggressive. The rest of the time, capybaras maintain an almost absolute harmony and a very collaborative attitude among the group. A key to the survival of these rodents in the Pantanal is communication. Through sounds such as purring, barking, whistling, and grunting, capybaras are always in contact with their fellow species. When, for example, the imposing jaguar has set its eyes on one of the members of the group and moves with the utmost stealth stalking its prey, and a capybara detects the threat, it emits a sound similar to the bark of a dog, which is the warning voice for the whole group to flee in panic, often straight into the water. In the same tributary where the capybaras bathe stands an imposing 60-centimeter-long antler. But the capybaras have nothing to fear, for this is the peaceful marsh deer. The ecosystem full of river sources and abundant vegetation of the Pantanal is ideal to be home to the marsh deer. Like the friendly capybara, this deer is a prodigious swimmer and can even swim with ease in fast-flowing rivers where the current is a problem for other species. The secret of the marsh deer's ability to glide through the waters as if it were a fish lies in its wide hooves with interdigital membranes on its toes, which function as a kind of flippers. In spite of this, the deer prefer to stay in waters only 60 centimeters deep, where they can transport themselves by leaping, using their powerful hind legs. Also, the dense vegetation of the Pantanal allows the marsh deer to stay protected from the many predators in its habitat. Although paying enough attention, it is a little difficult not to notice a majestic deer up to 2 meters in length and 150 kilograms in weight, with a beautiful reddish-brown coat. All this, in the case of male deer, crowned with large forked antlers, ending in 5 points. Conveniently, the marsh deer vary their time of peak activity during the day, depending on the season of the year, in order to be safer from predators. They are often most active in the early morning hours, when the birds are just beginning to sing, and at dusk, when the sun bids farewell to the Pantanal, all this to avoid the hottest hours of the day. Feeding is one of the tasks that occupies most of the marsh deer's routine. In an ecosystem with a myriad of plant species, their diet is somewhat varied, including various grasses, fruits, and roots. The ability to adapt its diet to both aquatic and terrestrial plant species makes the marsh deer a model inhabitant, and able to withstand the hardships that seasonal changes bring in the Pantanal. In rainy seasons, when rivers swell and flood most of the plain, the deer seek higher ground where they can graze comfortably. On the other hand, when Mother Nature takes away the Pantanal waters, in order to survive these difficult conditions, the deer abandon their original habitat in search of the last available water holes for miles. Unlike the indomitable jaguar or the wild caiman, which want to establish their vast domains in the swamp, the deer only wants to live peacefully among the vegetation, without encountering problems. In general, swamp deer live a solitary life, although in some cases they form small groups of no more than 5 specimens, where they roam their habitat in search of food. From the imposing appearance of the males, one might think that, like other deer species, they use their large antlers to fight duels, from which only one will come out alive. But the truth is that swamp deer are very peaceful with each other, and not at all territorial, so altercations are almost non-existent. Even when a female deer is available for mating, the males do not break the harmony of their small space in the Pantanal, and do not even compete for the female. Perhaps the fact that the females of the species are always in heat throughout their reproductive life has to do with the passivity of the males at the time of mating. Immediately after the 260 days of gestation, from which the doe will bring a new inhabitant to the Pantanal, she will be in heat again to continue growing the family. Many female marsh deer spend their entire lives pregnant. The swamp deer's place in the food chain is not at all favorable in a place like the Pantanal. Living in the corner of the world with the highest density of jaguars and caimans, it must always be alert, as you never know when one of these ferocious predators may be hungry, waiting to devour the up to 150 kilograms of meat that an adult specimen represents. However, having a wild jaguar leap directly over your head, or having an armored caiman yakker appear out of the water, are not the only fears that species like the marsh deer must face. Perhaps an even worse future is that of being strangled to death by a giant green anaconda of the Pantanal. The swamp climate that this region of the world acquires after months of heavy rains is perfect for being home to the largest snakes on the planet. With a weight of up to 200 kilograms and a length of around 10 meters, one false step for many of the Pantanal's wild species can mean being suffocated by a fearsome green anaconda. Despite its reputation for having an infinite appetite, and to the good fortune of the Pantanal's resident species, meals of the green anaconda are very infrequent. A specimen may even go for months without devouring new prey, as it can take up to 2 weeks to digest a single meal. Of course, when a Pantanal anaconda is determined to eat, it won't exactly be looking for a snack. These gluttons are capable of gobbling up to 45 kilograms of meat in one meal, so they will be more than satisfied and prepared for a long digestion. Green anaconda's natural camouflage is one of their tools for hunting success. With a pattern of dark spots on their skin, it is almost impossible for shallow water species to distinguish these colossal carnivores from the swampy ground. Like the caiman yakkari, the kingdom of the green anaconda is found in the flooded lands of the Pantanal. These snakes, in fact, tend to be somewhat clumsy and slow out of the water. The green anaconda's hunting strategy is almost infallible. Taking advantage of having its nostrils on top of its head, the anaconda can swim with its entire body submerged and peek out to detect the location of its victim. Just as they are slow and coarse on land, they are fast and flexible in water. Having spotted its next meal, the green anaconda plans its attack. When the victim usually approaches the water looking for food, the ferocious anaconda pounces on it with its relentless bite of 6 layers of sharp teeth. With the anaconda's jaw strength, it is almost impossible to free oneself when caught. The next move is to coil over the prey, and with its corpulent musculature, strangle it. This surprise attack usually takes only about 10 seconds, after which the anaconda will be gulping down a hearty meal and giving another Pantanal inhabitant an unwelcome end. But staying away from the waters of the Pantanal does not eliminate 100% of the chances of being attacked by a green anaconda. Another hunting method often used by these fearsome reptiles is to spot their victims from the treetops, as they have the ability to climb very well. Thus, a capuchin monkey can be peacefully enjoying a pleasant day in the Pantanal, and only a few seconds later be devoured by a relentless anaconda. Like many other predators of the Pantanal, the green anaconda's menu includes many species such as agoutis, lizards, capybaras, jacanas, deer, and practically anything it can swallow. Cases of cannibalism have even been reported in this species, mainly females devouring male anacondas. It is believed that this behavior, more than a measure to satiate hunger, occurs to avoid competition for prey. Although with its effective hunting strategy and copious size, the green anaconda may feel like the goddess and all-powerful of the Pantanal waters, sometimes it is prey to its ego, and its ambition makes it make mistakes. The caiman does not like at all that another species wants to take over its domain, and when these two meet in the flooded lands of the Pantanal, there are often clashes of titans, in which the anaconda can be seriously injured by the powerful bite of the caiman. However, there are also cases in which, in a sort of coup d'etat, the green anaconda ends up devouring the king of the swamp. The same is true of the majestic jaguar, which will not flinch for a second from engaging in combat against a green anaconda if it dares to challenge its grandeur. While it is true that adult anacondas, except for the jaguar and the caiman face few threats in their daily life in the Pantanal, the same is not true in their first days of life. The hatchlings of the green anaconda are an easy target for herons, jabiru, caracaras, and of course, caimans. It even seems like nature's revenge that the young of these imposing hunters of the Pantanal waters are devoured by the species they instill so much fear in. And speaking of fear, that is precisely what this little coati feels when he sees a feline moving through the thick vegetation of the Pantanal. All he can see for now is a figure with short yellow fur and long, retractable claws. For the coati, there is good news and bad news. The good news is that it is not the ferocious jaguar of the Pantanal, and the bad news is that it is about to become prey to the glorious ocelot. The ocelot is an exotic medium-sized feline, which, like the jaguar, is part of the rich ecosystem of the Pantanal. Although slightly similar in its fur, the ocelot is much more compact in size compared to the imposing jaguar, weighing on average around 11 kilograms. The shape of the head, as well as its ears, are other characteristics that separate the almighty king of the Pantanal from the wild ocelot. Despite its size, the ocelot has everything it takes to be a successful hunter and enjoy a good predator's life in the Pantanal. The ocelot's athletic abilities are enviable, being able to jump, climb, and swim with total ease. Its large ears ensure that it can hear everything that potential prey does near its habitat. Their paws, in addition, have comfortable pads that allow them to walk through the thickest vegetation as stealthily as possible, and hide a set of sharp, retractable claws, which they will not hesitate to use when hunting or as gripping tools when climbing trees. When you are a small feline in one of the wildest places in the world, you must manage to survive, and the ocelot sees staying in the shadows as its perfect strategy. Often, when the wildlife of the Pantanal begins to sleep after a busy routine. It is the time when the ocelot starts its activity. Usually, during the day, the ocelot can be found sleeping in one of the branches of the trees in the Pantanal highlands. Almost always alone, this feline is highly territorial, so it is rarely seen in company. Each male of the species usually dominates a territory of approximately 14 square kilometers. What the ocelot lacks in size when it comes to hunting, it can be said that it has in ingenuity. Because of its small size, the ocelot obviously does not have the need or the capacity to hunt large capybaras, weighing 50 kilograms. But this feline is the terror of small and medium-sized animals of the Pantanal. The ocelot's diet includes opossums, monkeys, coatis, weasels, and even birds, reptiles, and anything that can meet its nutritional requirements of only 800 grams of meat. When it comes to hunting, the ocelot has a few cards up its sleeve. However, its most used plan, and the one that puts the most food on the table, is to patiently stalk its victims and strike at the right moment. When it catches a prey, it is a good day for the ocelot. And here, when devouring what it has hunted, a particularity occurs in the species. Because unlike the rest of the felines that remove the feathers and fur of their prey while they eat them, the ocelot takes some time before even starting to leave its plate without a single feather or hair, and thus eat more placidly. In those hunts in which the ocelot has gotten a small prey, and the scavengers smell fresh meat at low cost, most likely they will not have any leftovers left over. The ocelot has a particularly rough tongue that allows it to easily tear off every last bit of meat stuck to the bones of its victim. Although one might think otherwise, sharing some characteristics with its relative, the jaguar, does not give the ocelot any additional benefit. In fact, these small felines tend to inhabit areas of the Pantanal where, precisely, the jaguar does not usually roam. Thus, they can keep themselves safe from the giant felines, against which, in direct combat, they have little chance of escaping unscathed. Besides the jaguar, the green anaconda and the puma are other species that challenge the tranquility of the ocelot. So when hunting, this feline always takes a look to make sure he is the predator and not become prey for a miscalculation. While the ocelot prefers to remain solitary in the safety of the Pantanal's treetops to avoid its predators, there is one species that goes for the option of concentrating in large groups in the flooded lands of this immense swamp. Here in the Pantanal, even the fish show their ferocity, and the red-bellied piranhas are the greatest representative of this. The endless waters of the Pantanal hide in their depths large schools of these magnificent fish. True to their name, red-bellied piranhas have a reddish hue on the lower part of their body when they have reached full development. The rest of their body is gray with some silver-speckled scales. Being deep in the Pantanal, where everything is wilder and bigger, red-bellied piranhas are not far behind, as they can reach a weight of up to 4 kilograms and a length of 50 centimeters. With this imposing size, piranhas can be a very good catch of the day for some Pantanal species. However, in these murky waters where, at times, there are hundreds of red-bellied piranhas, the line between fishing and being devoured by endless schools is quite thin. Although piranhas have a reputation for being relentless carnivores, the truth is that they are an omnivorous species, wasting virtually nothing they find in the tributaries of the Pantanal. Whether it is juicy fruit, leaves, insects, or mollusks, and of course, other fish, red-bellied piranhas spare nothing and make it part of their diet. Piranhas are also scavengers par excellence, making good use of the carcasses of animals that end up in their domain, and fulfilling the important task of keeping the waters of the Pantanal clean. But these fish don't always wait for food to come to them. When there is a shortage of prey in the Pantanal, The red-bellied piranhas are hungry, and they organize themselves into huge schools ready to devour whatever comes their way. When this happens, animals as large as egrets and even capybaras must guard the ponds where they enter to swim, for you never know when hundreds of piranhas will appear out of nowhere to claim them as their dinner. A school of red piranhas is capable of devouring prey as colossal as a capybara in just minutes, leaving only their bones behind. With the Pantanal full of life, the males decide that this is the ideal time to grow the species. To do this, they will look for a safe place where the female can lay her eggs. Often, a hole surrounded by aquatic plants is more than perfect. After having a home, the male will do a kind of dance to attract the female, who will deposit up to 3,000 eggs in the nest. Here comes the turn of the male again, who will fertilize the eggs, which in only 2 to 3 days will bring thousands of new red-bellied piranhas to the Pantanal. These young fish will be cared for by the pair from possible predators until they can fend for themselves. At the time of heaviest rains in the Pantanal, the piranhas are in their personal oasis, for food is plentiful, and they have wide domains to roam, almost without limitations. Of course, nothing good lasts forever, and just as the rains appeared to flood this infinite plain, they disappear. As the waters begin to recede, the piranhas watch helplessly as their kingdom vanishes. And what were once vast river paths teeming with life are now reduced to just a few wells with a few liters of water. In this not at all advantageous position for piranhas, nature takes its toll on the victims of the fish's voracious appetite, and the dinner guests are not long in coming. In a Pantanal where prey is now in short supply, a nutritious fish weighing up to 4 kilograms is an absolutely worthless dish for caimans, giant otters, herons, and snakes. This other side of the Pantanal, of course, does not only affect marine life. Although the wildlife of the Pantanal is accustomed to great changes, where relentless rains and droughts are an endless cycle, this ecosystem, in addition to being the most diverse on the planet, is extremely delicate. When the dry months have lashed the plains for a long time, the only thing that maintains the balance of the ecosystem is the endless rains that flood vast lands, bringing back to life caimans, jaguars, jabiru, and hundreds of other species. However, in recent years, the dry season has been getting longer and longer in the Pantanal, and those longed-for days of rain have been conspicuous by their absence. In 2024, for example, very little rainfall was recorded in the first 4 months, which are usually the stormiest, resulting in a decrease of almost 10% of the area covered with water compared to the previous year. Increasingly, frequent droughts in the Pantanal bring with them voracious fires that wipe out all plant and animal life in their path. By the year 2024, more than 2,600 fires were detected, wiping out what were once refuges for thousands of species. The impact of human activity is leaving an indelible mark on the still majestic Pantanal. The construction of dams in the area deprives animals such as giant otters, caiman, yakari caimans, and green anacondas of their vital liquid. The latter have also been particularly affected by hunting for the purpose of commercializing their skins. Another latent threat to the glorious Pantanal is a project to dredge and straighten the Paraguay River, the main tributary of this great swamp. Without all that water, the decline in the wetlands could be a blow from which the Pantanal's wildlife will not recover. Deforestation and the rise of large-scale agriculture are other dangers that are threatening the most diverse ecosystem on the planet. With the loss of large forests, thousands of species are forced to leave their homes, altering the Pantanal's wildlife forever, with territorial animals such as the indomitable jaguar seeing their habitat shrink. These felines are forced to crowd into smaller and smaller plots in the Pantanal, where altercations with other animals are more frequent. The growth of cattle ranching is also a problem for the subsistence of the Pantanal jaguar. As the jaguar is a threat to livestock, many farmers are hunting them, further reducing the population of these majestic felines. For the caiman yakari, the story is not much different. In the past, when human activities had little impact on the Pantanal, and the dry season lasted just long enough, the caimans waited patiently buried in the mud for the rains to return their watery domains. Today, with the rainy season diminishing at an alarming rate, many caiman do not live long enough to see another day of abundance in their marshes. Pollution of the Pantanal's waters is also a factor that is depleting wildlife. With the development of mining in the area, much of its waste is deposited directly on the habitat of red-bellied piranhas and jabiru. This, in turn, limits the growth of the abundant aquatic plants on which species such as marsh deer and capybara feed. However, despite the discouraging panorama, there are many initiatives aimed at preserving this ecosystem, both public and private. In 2018, the governments of Brazil, Bolivia, and Paraguay signed the Pantanal Declaration, an agreement that seeks to create solutions for the conservation of what is still an oasis for thousands of animal and plant species. The creation of spaces such as the Pantanal Conservation Zone is also part of the efforts to protect the world's largest wetland. Although much remains to be done, the combination of environmental protection initiatives and the resilience of the Pantanal's inhabitants to live can reverse the damage caused and restore the Pantanal to its status as the cradle of wildlife in the depths of South America. If you enjoyed learning about the stories of the wild inhabitants of the Pantanal, remember to like the video and leave in the comments box which species impressed you the most. Also, to support us and contribute to raise awareness about the preservation of the majestic Pantanal, you can share the video with your friends. Together, we can make the necessary changes to keep this sanctuary full of life. See you next time with more awesome wildlife stories.